Hi, this is part 3 in the completing the duct design calculations. Once you have completed parts D and E, you can take this information and begin to design your actual HVAC system. So the first step would be to determine your furnace location. This is the symbol for our furnace, and it would be preferable to have as centrally located position for the furnace as possible. This is not always achievable depending on the layout of the house, but in most cases we can get something pretty central. The next thing you need to determine is the direction of the floor joists, and typically you will see symbols on the drawing that will indicate the direction of the floor joists. And so typically you want to lay out your trunk ductwork, the main ducts, perpendicular to your joist direction. So in the case of the front portion of the house, the joists are running side to side. Our trunk duct would be running front to back, back to front. Whereas in the back portion of the house, these floor joists are running from front to back. You will notice that our trunk duct is running from side to side. By having the trunks perpendicular to the floor joists, it allows us to have our individual branch ducts all running within the joist spaces. And by doing so, this helps to maintain as much headroom in the basement as possible. Now, I recommend that you start on the second floor and figure out where you want to put your return airs. If you recall from part E, it was suggested here that we look at installing 3 return airs on the second floor. Now, there is a building code requirement that says you need a minimum of 1 outlet per floor, but you'll likely find throughout your career that there's very little chance of getting 1 outlet, particularly on 1 inlet, particularly on the second floor. Another rule is that at least one of the outlets must be centrally located, and a hallway is generally regarded as the central location for any floor, and so you'll be looking to place a return air in the hallway. Now, if you were planning to place a return air in each bedroom, then you are not required to put the return air in the hallway. But since we've got 4 bedrooms and the recommendation is for 3 return airs, then it would make sense to put 1 return air in the hallway. I also strongly recommend that the second return air be placed in the master bedroom. And then in the case of this house where we've got a third, I would look at placing the third return air in the bedroom with the greatest amount of glass. And that happens to be bedroom 4. When you compare the area of glass in bedroom 4 to that of bedroom 2 or 3, it's quite a bit more. And so it would likely require a larger heating and cooling airflow rate, so it would make sense to put a return air in bedroom 4. So once you've decided on these locations, you have to verify that in fact these locations have corresponding joist spaces on the first floor to help us get the air down to the basement. So the easiest way to do this is to simply compare the location that you've selected here on the second floor and transfer it into the first floor. And once you see where that's where that transfers down, we can determine if we've got a wall and that the floor joists are helping out with our particular design. Now fortunately we've got this wall here that is right beside the stairs, and typically you'll find in most houses that this wall will continue from the second floor all the way down the first floor, and so it tends to be a very good wall to use in order to get second floor returns down to the basement level. And so we can see that we've got these three returns fitting in nicely. So that means we can get our our second floor returns down into the basement. The next thing we want to look at is the number of return air locations on the first floor. Now, it's recommended that we look at 3 inlets on the first floor, but keep in mind that on the first floor we often have larger walls, and in this case we've got some 2x6 walls here. Typically on the second floor you tend to only have 2x4 walls, and so because you've really only got 2x4s, the plate opening that's created in a 2x4 stud space is equal to approximately 14 by 3.5 inches. If you compare that to the plate opening in a 2x6 wall, the 2x6 wall would be 14 by 5.5. So there is quite a bit more free area in the plate opening on the first floor. This allows us to then get more airflow through each individual plate opening. So although our calculation suggested 3, because we've got 2x6 partitions here, I am going to suggest that we start with, in this case, 2 plate openings, which would be equal to perhaps a 30x6 or a 30x8 return air grill. Now, since all of these return airs are going to be in this centrally located wall, when you transfer them down to the basement, you can see the location of these particular return airs. So this centrally located wall has proven to be a good location for our returns, and that has brought us nice directly into the basement. Now, in terms of our basement return air, because the basement's unfinished, you are allowed to place a fitting directly on the side of the duct, and that fitting would simply, for lack of a better term, simply creates a hole in the side of the duct that allows for air to return back to the furnace. You will have to install a damper in this fitting to help control the different required airflow rates between summer and winter. But now we've got our return airs brought back into the basement, and we are suggesting a return duct to pick up these return airs and carry the air back to the furnace. Now that we've found a good location for the return air, we can move to selecting the location for the supply air.